Before I really get moving into my Rebels finale review, I want to warn everyone spoilers are ahead. So until you've seen the episodes, don't watch. So let's get right into it. I'm going to first off say I've never been happier to be more wrong. If you saw my big weekend that was video yesterday, you know I made a few predictions about who I thought would be whacked off in the finale. We'll get to that at the end, but I'm happy to say that I was very wrong on all those accounts. But first off, we get into the episode of Fool's Hope uh, to get into the finale. And it starts off with Ezra having a little bit of a force vision of Thrawn's return, which means that whatever they need to do to take back Lothal, they need to do now. So they come up with this ingenious plan to sort of get themselves captured, to get themselves inside the city. We bring back Callus, Rex, Gregor, and Hondo and Wolf. So a lot of characters from previously in the series come back. I thought that was a great touch. Um, and they use Ryder to betray the rebels, give up their location so that they can secretly get to Price, which almost didn't happen, but thanks to Hera in the Ghost, everything turns out mostly according to plan, with a little bit of help from the Loth Wolves showing up, and the Loth Wolves fuck shit up. I mean, they knock out Rook, they terrify Price to almost tears. It was an incredible move on the part of Ezra to get the Loth Wolves involved. So, with that being said, they enact their plan, they get into the city, and that's when we get into the finale. Family reunion and farewell. So, as the transports arrive, Callus uses Price to get into the Imperial base, and they sneak into the command center. Their plan is to use the base's boosters to lift it up and then self-destruct it while escaping on the Ghost. Unfortunately, Grand Admiral Thrawn shows up at just the wrong time and threatens to essentially bombard the city if Ezra doesn't surrender. And you can tell that it really weighs heavy on Ezra's mind that he really wants to take back the city, but he also knows that he needs to do the right thing and not put countless of innocent lives at danger. And there's a great scene where he makes a nod toward Sabine, and Sabine understands that Ezra needs to make this move. So while they're all formulating a plan to try and beat Thrawn, um, Ezra sneaks through an air duct and begins his surrender. While all that's going on, Rook, who was soundly beaten by the Loth Wolves, but not dead yet, not dead. Rook has proved very hard to kill. I've loved the way they portrayed him. It's not quite as the same as the books. Not gonna complain. It's been great, and I love the way Warwick Davis has portrayed him. But Rook knocks out a couple of the extra members who are waiting to pick up the team, and gets back just in time to knock out all the shield generators. So now all of the rebels are left vulnerable. Vulnerable is probably the right word to use in that sense, but credit to Hera. Hera rallies the troops together, splits the group in two, and they go gung ho for resetting the the shield generator to make sure that they buy Ezra all the time that he needs. Meanwhile, as part of Ezra's surrender, there's a great standoff between him and Thrawn. And one of my favorite bits in that is when Thrawn mentions that he's made a collection of Sabine's artwork, and Ezra just looks at him and goes, "You don't deserve any of this." But then the real tear-jerking parts begin, where Thrawn brings Ezra to a hologram of the Emperor, and it's really interesting to look at this because in the previous episode, you see the Emperor with his hood, his blue fire, all that exciting things that made Palpatine the Dark Lord of the Sith that he is. But you get a cleaner image of him, sort of back from Clone Wars era and before he had lightning thrown in his face era Palpatine. And you can see him playing his little mind games with Ezra. Oh, through this portal, because it's a portal from the temple from before. But through that portal, Ezra can see his mom and dad. And one of the big arcs of the past couple episodes is that Ezra really wishes that things could have been different. He wanted his life to be different. He wishes he could still see his parents. And he's torn because he's got his parents, but now he's got the crew of the Ghost, which, as he calls, his new family, and he loves both of these families, and he's torn. Which one do I pick? And you can tell which one the Emperor wants him to go with because it's a trap. He wants Ezra to activate the portal so that he can get into the portal and create chaos and destruction, because it's who controls the portals controls the universe, essentially, is what I sort of remember from the previous episodes. But Ezra, defiant of the Emperor or aware of his little trap, decides, I'm sticking with this fight against the Empire, and I'm sticking with my new family of Phoenix Squadron. And he collapses that last bit of the temple, that he collapses that portal, and in his sort of enraging moments, you see Palpatine's hologram switching between that clean-cut Chancellor Palpatine and that grizzled, deformed, maniacal Emperor. It's sort of like trying to... What's the best way to probably put this? It's like trying to determine exactly whether we're going to be chaotic neutral or just chaotic bad, or either way, it's an extreme bit of chaos. But so Ezra escapes that, and then they have a final has a final confrontation with Thrawn. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, the battle to restart the shield generators is going on between stormtroopers. I believe there were a few Death Troopers, but some stormtroopers and some typical government techs. You know, those helmets. Versus Rook versus the clone troopers, Gregor and Rex, and then Hondo and his little friend is there, and as is Zeb. And there's I almost was right when I said Zeb was going to die, because there's a scene where he just takes Rook and they fall off a platform, and you're like, no, there he goes. And then there's a moment where Hondo's little friend gets shot, and you're like, no, he's gone. And then Gregor gets shot, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, he's gone. But only one of them actually really died, and that was Gregor. Hondo's little Ugnaught friend, he came back, and then right before they reactivate all the the shield generator couplings, you see Zeb twist Rook's, I believe it's his leg, in some of the coils. And there's a great comical moment where Thrawn is trying to contact Rook over the communicator, and Zeb's like, oh, he'll have to call you back in a minute. And then he starts seeing Rook get fried by the power couplings. He's like, actually, he's not going to be calling you back at all, or don't bother calling back, or something equally funny. It was a great, great, typical Star Wars style humor that was very reminiscent of Poe Dameron's I'm holding for General Hux. General Hux, kind of pasty. Um, but they get the shield generator up. Um, and then the confrontation between Ezra and Thrawn. It's great speeches all the way around on both ends. And just when you think all is lost for the rebels, the space whales. The space whales have returned. I was not a big fan of those episodes. I thought they were a little filler and cheesy, but I guess if this was the end game for them, it makes some sense. I wasn't when I heard that the lines where Thrawn was talking was trying to contact one of his star destroyers, and it's like the entire blockade's been destroyed. I was trying to figure out who or what, or was it the rest of the rebels, or what could have destroyed that blockade, and the space whales, or the what are they actually called? I'm looking this up real quick. Purrgil, but the space whales are what knocked out Thrawn's fleet. Nope. That was one of the ones that made me sort of question it. But if that's what they were going to go with all along, who am I to argue with Dave Filoni? And as Hera and the rest of the crew sees what's going on, they initiate their original plan. The original plan was to self-destruct the Imperial station, and when they see that the ghost is leading in with the space whales, they reinitiate the plan, and unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, but this is sort of where I started to feel like it didn't quite feel like we ended the series off the way I personally wanted it. But the space whales grab onto Thrawn's ship, and because their whole purpose is that they are space whales that have hyperspace, Ezra gives a hologram. There's a hologram where he gives a tearful goodbye, and he's gone. The space whales take Thrawn's ship into hyperspace after it wasn't an impressive battle because Ezra had left his lightsaber behind with Sabine. It was blaster on blaster. So uncivilized. But Thrawn got a couple good shots in. Ezra was shot from behind. You thought Ezra was going to, again, I thought Ezra, when I said I predicted Ezra was going to die, I didn't expect him to be shot by stormtroopers in a confrontation with Thrawn. But it looks like they kept his story open because all that happened was the space whales took both Thrawn and Ezra away into hyperspace to who knows where. Could it be deep space? Could the Knights of Ren really be Ezra's uprising or new group because of how far away he went? There's a little bit of a tie-in with that at the end. But the Phoenix Squadron completes their goal. They levitate they hit the boosters. Up goes the base. The base gets blown to pieces, and we say goodbye to one of the characters who I thought was going to die. Not this way, but we say goodbye to Governor Price, who was good in the book, didn't love her in the series, thought that she was an okay villain, but you could Thrawn over Price any day of the week. But they gave her an opportunity to save herself. Kallus has said, "Come with us," and she was Governor Price was Imperial to the very end, and she went down with her base. The final scenes, as far as the storyline is concerned, the Ghost is flying low over the city of Lothal, and the entire city, or the area, I guess they're in the capital of Lothal, is cheering them on. Way to go! You've liberated us. We are so proud, and it shows because Hera or Rex was talking about, well, now that we've liberated Lothal, we're going to need an army here to keep the Empire at bay. And Hera just said, nope, just a group of us. Now, I could have the characters backwards, so don't 100% quote me on that. But in the end, they completed their mission. They saved Lothal, and they did it with most of their team intact. So I was very wrong on that on that account, and I will gladly take that one on the chin. But then there's the epilogue, and this is where there's a lot of speculation. They go into talking about what happened to all the various Phoenix Squadron members as the war and the rebellion rages on. What we already knew was that Hera and Rex were part of the Battle of Endor, and we'll just say Chopper was a part of that as well. It is Hera's droid. We saw the little miniseries, and we know that they've confirmed that Rex was part of that battle. And they even make mention of it in this little epilogue. It was very, very touching, and it shows that it just is another way of showing Filoni knows canon, probably better than most people, especially within Lucasfilm itself. Then they show Zeb. Zeb goes with Kallus to, I can't remember the name of the planet now. Forgive me. But Zeb is with Kallus, and they sort of go on buddy adventures. And in a very touching moment that goes all the way back to season 1, where Zeb was like, Kallus is shipping out these weapons that killed all my people. Well, they've found sort of refugees that are the more of Zeb's people, and it's a touching moment where Zeb essentially says, see, my people have continued to survive. You didn't kill them off. It was seeing the smile on Kallus's face was warming, and I don't want a series between them, but I do want I do want like a little mini comic series. I think that would be fun. And then we see Hera and a small child that apparently is Kanan's. Okay, I missed something. I also am not wholly convinced how that goes timeline-wise, because there's a lot of years between the end of Rebels and Return of the Jedi. I don't see how that timeline is supposed to work, but we are introduced to Jacen Syndulla, and I guess there's a little bit of a little bit of love to Legends there, because it's Jacen, a la Jacen Solo from the Legends novels. So that's a cool little tie-in by itself right there. And then we see Sabine, and there's a great image of some artwork that Sabine made of the entire Ghost crew, including Kanan before he lost his eyesight, and I believe it shows Ezra before he got his haircut, and it's sort of homage to when they first started working together as part of Phoenix Squadron. And Sabine stayed on Lothal, expecting a counterattack that, as she said, never came. And it's important now to realize that when Ahsoka shows up, I think that they're teasing a new series, and I would love to see the adventures of Sabine and Ahsoka together. If I don't get that as a series, I would love that as a comic book or a graphic novel or just a novel in general. I think that maybe the next Ahsoka novel is Ahsoka and Sabine looking for Ezra. I'd also be interested to see if, because of we don't know where they took Ezra, if that is where we start exploring the unknown regions where Snoke supposedly came from, where the First Order supposedly rose, or and it all. I'm also interested to see if they play any role in the Resistance once the Resistance starts taking off, and maybe we'll see some stories of Mandalore in the New Republic. Just some speculations, but it's going to be interesting now that Rebels is over to see what comes next for Dave Filoni. I would love to see him do a live action series. Maybe not a movie right away, but I'd like to see him do a live action series where it's the bounty hunters. I know that there's a lot of talk about a Boba Fett movie. I'm not all in on a Boba Fett movie. I want to see bounty hunters. I want to see Dengar. We all know what happened to IG-88, but I want to see Zuckuss, Forlom, and all the other bounty hunters that we saw on Vader's ship during Empire. I want to see a series predating that tells their stories and some escapades and stuff like that. But farewell to Rebels. And did you enjoy the finale? Have you speculated as to what's next for Filoni? If you want to comment below and tell me what you thought of it, feel free to do so. If you liked this content, you are more than welcome to subscribe. And until next time, cheers.